Hello again and thanks for joining. So this is what we've got coming up on this episode. It's a Roco International model, it's number 4189S and it is a Motorwagen. Let's check it out. So here we have the model in its box. I did get this second hand as normal. This model has been out for a little while. This box is faring pretty good though. It has some scuffs, possibly shelf wear on the outside of the box here, but it seems to be intact. It's a bit more damage here, but you can see the number 04189S and it is also HO scale. So let's have a look and see what we've got inside here. So first of all, we've got this instruction sheet which shows the model here, and it looks as though you can add an extra coach at the back of this one and have it as a 2-car set with a trailer. We don't have that coach, we've only got the front part. And you can see here that there are various different numbers here. We've got this one here, 4189S. So that's a Motorwagen, but it looks as though we can have some other bits and pieces as well which we can add to this set. Further down we've got some history of the actual prototype as well as some information about this model. It's in German and English, and I think this is French here, so that's quite good, it's multilingual. And we also see here that we've got the option to change whether this is picking up from the track or from overhead. So that's really quite a nice addition to this model. On the back it's talking about some maintenance information, and it's also interestingly saying it's got a 5-pole motor. So this has got a lot going for it already just by the instructions. We've also got the Roco pin badge here. I don't know why they add these into the models. I don't know anybody who walk around with a Roco pin badge. So even though I got this model second hand, this part hasn't actually ever been taken off the tray, so that's quite interesting. So it's got some transfers here for destination boards, and on the other side we've got some additional couplings. So finally we can see the model, and it has this plastic sleeve which helps you get the model out of the tray. So let's give that a go. So one thing about this model straight away is it's actually quite heavy. It gives an air of quality to it. I did a review very recently of a model very similar to this one. I'll put a link in the description below to it. So let's start at this end. It's got a very characterful look with this red stripe at the bottom here and these lights which are very large and almost like a pair of eyes. And it has the gangway to other coaches. That is a very nicely detailed piece of plastic there with these ridges and extra parts added on. And you can see that it's glazed in the middle there and also on each side. Looking down the side of this Motorwagen, it's got 2 doors here and some indication of an interior there. But you can see that it's got these ugly wires coming down from the roof. I did read in the instructions that you can get power coming from the pantograph down into this model, and these cables here obviously transfer that down into the chassis, but they've not made any effort to hide those at all, so it's quite an ugly thing to look at, especially because the glazing is so clear and you can see straight through. You can also see that it has an interior of some seating there moulded in brown, and on the glazing you can see that it has this brown printed on it that's very similar to the other one that I reviewed recently, in which I said it kind of makes it look a bit like it's got curtains or something. It doesn't look very convincing, and I'm not that keen on this design. Further down on the body it's got some really nice rivet detail, and you can see here the printing of the words in and the number 2, I guess second class, and there's also some numbers printed down on the chassis as well, which are very small. You can barely see them with the naked eye, and you can see the NS logo here. And here's a number 2 and Ute, which I guess is exit. Another pair of doors which are really quite nicely moulded. There's actually a lot of detail on this moulding of the body, and you can see the brackets and the door handles there, and also the glazing as well. And the rivet detail continues all the way down the side of the body. Here you start to see where there's maybe some baggage compartment, because it has these railings printed on the inside of the plastic, and there's no interior here. It's just been blanked out with some brown plastic, so I'm guessing the motor is in this area. At this end there's some more writing here, some numbers and details, and as you come round to the front of the Motorwagen you can see that it has the numbers BD9151 on the corners there, which is really nicely applied. It has some yellow flashes with red dots and another red band at the front, and these really cool looking lights which almost look like eyes. It almost looks like something like maybe a frog or something like that. But one thing you'll notice here is we've got a bit of a problem with the red and the yellow, and it's got really fuzzy edges to it. So the painting hasn't been done very well on those. You can see inside here, there's no detail. You've just got the big motor on top of the bogie, and you can see part of it there moving about. So it'd be very difficult to put a driver or anything in here if you wanted to. So it does have a single windscreen wiper molded onto the plastic there as well. So looking at the top, you have a silver plastic roof, and there's a lot of details added onto it. This is where this model really shines, I think, because you'll see these little insulators in white with the wire running through it. It's really quite nicely done. There's also a lot of detail added on in terms of these vents and other little bits and pieces, and the pantographs are really nice as well, and they're held on very securely, but once you manage to get them off the little catches, they operate very well and are very detailed. They're spring loaded as well, and there's a lot of movement there. They're very delicate, but they're very nicely done. So looking further down, there's one thing that really strikes you straight away, which really lets this model down, which is this massive coupling here. It is cantilevered on the bogie, but it doesn't look as though you can change it for anything else. So that's a bit of a shame, because that is just a massive big coupling. So this bogie at the front is the one that's driven. It's got 2 traction tyres on this axle here, none on the front axle, but both axles are driven. There's some nice detail of the steps here added on, and you can see additional steps here underneath these double doors. These have a bit of play in them, which is great because they can be easily knocked off. So having been moulded in pliable plastic is a real bonus here. The front bogie has got a lot of detail as well. You can see the rivet details there in the springs and some nice deep relief on the axle boxes. Further down there's another set of steps and some really nicely moulded boxes here, and you can see this part here has been added on. I think that's a representation of air tanks or something. And this bogie at the back just picks up power. You can see the cables going up into the body there. So overall this is quite an impressive model. Let's see how it runs. Okay, I've got it on the test track. Let's give it some power and see what happens. So it started no problem there. I didn't need to give it a push or anything. That was good, and it runs really smoothly too. But one thing that's noticeable is that it's really noisy. Well, it ran pretty well, and I think we should maybe have a look at the mechanism and see what we've got inside here. So it looks like there's 2 screws here maybe holding the thing together, so I'm going to take those off first. I've just spotted that there's another screw at the front, and worryingly that's very silver compared to the 2 I've just taken off. Maybe this has been replaced at some point. Anyway, that needs to come off as well. And also here there's another one, and again worryingly this is another different design of screw, so I'm thinking maybe this model's been opened before. Anyway, we need to get this one off as well. So this part here seems to have come away from the roof. I think it's part of the lighting. So now we've got it apart, there's a few other things I've noticed on this. And first one is this obviously massive big motor that it's got. I don't think it really needed such a big motor, especially because this is not a locomotive designed to pull many coaches. This part here is all made of metal as well, which is adding to the weight of this model, and even the seating back here is actually part of the metal moulding, it's not plastic. So here you can see the switchable part between the overhead and from the rails. It just simply moves over like that, and the contact will then pick up from here, which is attached to a cable which runs to the pantographs. Quite a simple mechanism, but it works quite well. You can also see here it's got some lighting on the roof here and also down at this end. One of the other things I noticed is that the first 2 screws that I took out, these 2 here, actually just holds the metal part to the plastic chassis at the bottom. So I'm just going to put these screws back in now. So let's get this piece of plastic back in the roof. I'm just going to use some poly cement from Humbrol to do this. So while we're looking underneath this model, you can see the little wire here which runs between the 2 pantographs and comes to this plate here, and then that makes contact with the circuit board inside the model. So that's quite a simple but effective way of gathering up power from the overhead electric and putting it into the motor. Anyway, I've got this piece in now, so I'm going to put this aside, take a little break, get a cup of tea and let it dry, and then we'll put this back together. Some time has passed now and I'm sure the glue has dried, so I think it's time to get these 2 things back together. So one thing to remember when putting this back together is that there is a hole here which corresponds to the little controller for the electrics, and also obviously the seat in here corresponds to this side of the Motorwagen. So it should just slide on. So that went together a lot easier than I thought it would, and we just need to get these screws in. So we're all back together now and the model's ready to go back onto the layout, which is great news. Let's see how much this model weighs. So this model weighs 412 grams. So my overall thoughts on this model are a bit mixed, I think. There are some things I really like and some things which aren't so good. It's quite an interesting model. I think the prototype is quite interesting as well. It's got a really quirky look to it, almost reptilian at the front, and that's quite appealing. One of the things I really like is the details on the roof. The white insulators look really cool and the wire running through them is a really nice addition. The pantographs are also very good as well. It's quite cool that it picks up from overhead power and it's switchable between that and normal two-rail operation. That's a real bonus for this model, so I really like that. But there are some things which are not so good on this model. First one I think is the painting on the front and also on the back of the model. The red and the yellow has a bit of fuzziness around them and they really haven't been applied very nicely at all. The other thing is that I've noticed that there's a really ugly moulding mark on the roof which really lets it down because the rest of the roof detail is very good. I don't like the way that the windows have got this brown painted on them, which I think is meant to be some surround, but it just doesn't look that good at all. And finally, one of the things that's really annoying is the coupling at the front, which is just massive, it sticks out too far and you've got no option to take it off either. So that's a real disappointment that they've decided to do that. And one of the other things to consider is while this runs really smoothly, it is actually very noisy as well. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, this one. I guess it's a prototype which is quite interesting and therefore this model is interesting because of that. But you're going to have to put up with a few bits and pieces of annoying things if you do actually want to own this model. I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around. Let me know what you thought about this video and my analysis of these models in the comments below. I'd really be interested to hear what you think. Please give this video a thumbs up, it really helps this channel, and you can subscribe for more videos like this in the future. But for now, that's it for today. See ya!